A sign in the window of the laundromat on Crenshaw Boulevard reads Sudsy Justice in pink and blue neon, the letters blinking slow and steady all night long. Inside, 3 nights a week, my younger brother Marcus pushes a grey industrial mop across the tile floor, wearing a navy blue uniform shirt with the words "Trust Wash Out" embroidered over his heart. Last year he thought he had stolen the place, my entire $85,000 pension, and my dignity. He did not know about the folded piece of paper in my safety deposit box that would turn his perfect crime into my 3-night-a-week reminder that no betrayal escapes the rinse cycle. My name is Clara Vance, and I am 56 years old. For 30 years I worked as a senior teller at First Federal Savings, where I learned one unbreakable rule: the person holding the original document holds the truth. I handled thousands of deposit slips, cashier's checks, and mortgage papers, and I knew that a photocopy was just a ghost, but an original with a wet ink signature was a living, breathing fact. My late husband Daniel was a railroad engineer for Union Pacific, a quiet, methodical man who kept immaculate records in a series of black ledger books, each one labeled with the year in his neat block print. He once told me, "Paper is armor, Clara, the world runs on ink, and whoever holds the original wins." I remember him sitting at the kitchen table on Sunday evenings, reconciling our checkbook with a red pen, humming a tune from some old train song. He died of a heart attack 5 years ago, leaving me a lump sum pension payout of exactly $85,700. I had no children, no debt, just a small 2-bedroom house in Midlothian and a lifetime of habit when it came to filing things correctly. When my younger brother Marcus came to me 2 years ago with a business proposition, I should have seen the red flags flapping like laundry on a line. Marcus was the golden child, the one my mother doted on, the one who got into trouble a dozen times and was bailed out by me or by our parents before they passed. He had a new wife, Vanessa, a former hairdresser who now called herself a branding consultant and wore shoes that cost more than my monthly Social Security check. Marcus spun a story about a run-down laundromat on the south side called Sudsy Bubbles, owned by an elderly man ready to retire. The equipment was old but functional, the lease was favourable, and the location sat right on a busy bus line. He laid out his plan on my kitchen table, using a yellow legal pad and a lot of hand gestures, while Vanessa nodded along, her bracelets clinking like a cash register. He promised me half the business, a 50-50 partnership, and a monthly income stream that would carry me comfortably through my golden years. He said, "Clara, you're my sister. I would never let you down. We're family." All I had to do was cash out Daniel's pension and invest it for the down payment and renovations. I trusted my brother, so I said yes. We sat down in the back office of the laundromat, a dusty room smelling of dryer sheets and mildew, and I insisted we do it properly. I brought a notary public from my old bank, a woman named Elaine Rigby, a straight-laced professional who had notarized thousands of documents at First Federal and had a reputation for checking every single line of identification with the intensity of a passport control officer. She wore a navy blazer and carried her notary stamp in a hard leather case that snapped shut with authority. She verified our driver's licenses, watched us sign, and then pressed her seal into the paper with a deliberate, satisfying crunch. She stamped and signed a formal partnership agreement that named Marcus Vance and Clara Vance as equal co-owners of Sudsy Bubbles Laundromat LLC. I had prepared the document myself, based on templates I knew from years at the bank, and I added clauses about profit sharing, decision-making authority, and what would happen if either partner wanted to sell. There was a clause about dissolution, a clause about disputes, and a requirement that any sale of interest must be notarized with both parties present. When the ink dried, I placed my signed original in a manila envelope and locked it inside my safety deposit box number 447 at First Federal. Marcus kept a copy, but he never asked for the original. That was his first mistake. For the first year, things ran smoothly. I worked the counter 3 days a week, sorted coins, helped elderly customers fold their comforters, and kept the books in a ledger as tight as a vault door. The smell of warm cotton and the rhythmic thumping of the machines became a comfort. I knew the regulars by name: Mrs. Patterson, who came every Tuesday with her grandchildren's soccer uniforms, Mr. Delgado, who ran a small dog grooming business and washed piles of towels. I could tell by the sound of a dryer whether the belt needed tightening. Marcus handled maintenance, picked up supplies, and occasionally disappeared for hours without explanation. He would return with a vague story about meeting a vendor, and his eyes never quite met mine. Vanessa started coming around more often, critiquing the decor, suggesting they rebrand the place with a new name and a sleek logo. I thought it was harmless. The income was modest but reliable, and I felt a quiet satisfaction knowing I had secured my future. Then, on a Tuesday morning in late September, I arrived to find the front door locks changed. The key I had used for a year would not turn. I tried it 3 times, jiggling the handle, thinking the lock had frozen. The September wind kicked up, sending a candy wrapper skittering across the empty parking lot. I peered through the dusty glass and saw Marcus inside, standing with his arms crossed, Vanessa beside him clutching a designer handbag like a shield. She had a small, tight smile, the kind a cat wears after swallowing a canary. He walked to the door, slid a piece of paper through the crack and said, "Clara, you don't own anything here. You're just an old lady who loaned me some startup cash. The business is mine. Go home before I call the police." I looked down at the paper. It was a bill of sale, dated 3 weeks earlier, transferring my entire 50% interest in the business to Marcus for $1. My signature was scrawled at the bottom, a clumsy imitation of my neat cursive, the C too looped, the V slanted the wrong way. Beneath it was a notary stamp I had never seen before, with a name I did not recognize. A notary named Cynthia Belrose, with a commission number and an expiration date that seemed too fresh. The whole thing was a lie, sprayed with the stench of panic and greed. I stood there on the sidewalk, my heart hammering, as a city bus rattled past, belching diesel fumes. My brother, the boy I had fed when our mother was too sick to cook, the man I had trusted with my last dollar, had just stolen everything I had. I turned and walked home, my legs numb, my mind a blizzard of panic and grief. But by the time I reached my front porch, past the marigolds I had planted in Daniel's memory, the grief had crystallized into something cold and sharp and very, very patient. The next morning I went to First Federal and asked to access Box 447. The safety deposit vault smelled of old paper and metal polish, a scent that had been the background of my entire working life. It was the smell of order, of things kept safe against the chaos of the world. I signed the access slip with a steady hand, using the same pen I had used to sign thousands of customer receipts. The teller, a young woman named Rebecca who had started after I retired, led me into the vault and helped me slide the long metal box from its slot. The box was cool and heavy, the number 447 stamped on its face. I carried it into a private viewing room, a small cubicle with a wooden table and a single chair, and lifted the lid. Inside, nestled among the deed to my house and a small velvet pouch holding Daniel's wedding ring, was the manila envelope. I opened it and pulled out the original partnership agreement, the paper crisp, the notary stamp from Elaine Rigby clean and perfectly legible, both our signatures unmistakably genuine. I could see the slight indentation of Elaine's seal, the raised ridges of the notary embosser. I spread it flat on the table and stared at it for a long time, letting the truth settle in my bones. I had the original. Marcus did not know it existed. And that meant I had a weapon. Tucked behind the agreement, I found a sealed envelope with my name on it in Daniel's handwriting, that familiar block print. I had not noticed it when I first stored the folder, and my breath caught. My hands trembled as I tore it open. Inside was a short letter dated just a few weeks before he died, when we were still discussing the idea of the laundromat over dinner. It read, "Clara, if you are reading this, something has gone wrong. I always knew your brother was a taker. He smiles too easily and borrows without asking. At our wedding, he asked me for $50 within an hour of the ceremony. I never told you because I didn't want to cause a rift, but I also knew you would keep the original. That paper is your shield. Do not trust him. Do not give it to him. Save yourself. I love you, Daniel." I folded the letter carefully, my fingers tracing the loops of his handwriting, and placed it back in the envelope. My husband, even from the grave, had already seen the shape of this moment. That quiet man who had spent his life watching gauges and checking timetables had left me a dead man's switch of his own, the original document and the advice to hold it close. Before I continue this story, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit like and subscribe if you believe that keeping your own records is the first line of defense against betrayal. Now, back to how Marcus tried to bury me, and how I dug him a grave instead. That same afternoon, Marcus and Vanessa showed up at my door uninvited. They had never once visited me at home in 5 years, but now they stood on my porch like a pair of missionaries, grim-faced and insistent. Vanessa had the gall to hold a casserole dish, a Pyrex with a tinfoil top, as if a tuna noodle casserole could plaster over the theft of my entire life. "Clara, we are so worried about you," Marcus said, his voice dripping with false honey. "You seemed so confused at the laundromat, saying those strange things about ownership. We think maybe the stress is affecting your memory. You really should come stay with us for a while, just until you feel steadier." I saw the real play instantly. They wanted me under their roof where they could monitor my every move, control my access to phones and records, and eventually pressure me into signing documents that would cement his theft. Moving me into their home was a containment strategy, a velvet cage disguised as care. Vanessa added, her smile tight as a plastic bottle. We converted the guest room especially for you. It has a lovely view of the garden and I've put fresh sheets on the bed. It will be so much easier for us to help you there. I looked at my brother's eyes and I saw it, the flicker of a predator who thinks his prey is already weak. He was so certain I was just a lonely, frightened widow, so I gave him exactly what he expected. I let my shoulders slump, let my gaze go foggy. I rubbed my forehead and said, "You know, Marcus, you might be right. I have been so tired, and the bills and all this confusion, I do not know what is real anymore." The lie tasted bitter, but I swallowed it whole. I added a tremble to my voice, the kind of tremble an old woman uses when she is close to surrender. I even let a tear roll down my cheek, a calculated drop of weakness. He practically salivated. Within 2 hours, Vanessa had packed 2 suitcases full of my clothes and loaded them into their SUV, a gleaming black Lexus that smelled of new leather. I slipped my safety deposit box key into the lining of my purse, along with a small notebook and a prepaid cell phone I had purchased a week earlier under my neighbor Mrs. Hernandez's name, a simple burner with no connection to my old accounts. I also tucked in a miniature digital voice recorder, a slim silver device I had bought at an electronics store for $40, the kind that could capture conversations from across a room. Then I let them drive me to their house, a gaudy McMansion in a subdivision where every lawn looked like a golf course and every mailbox matched the shutters. They gave me a room at the back of the second floor, overlooking the garage, a room with a window that I noticed had a lock on the outside, a sliding bolt that could only be operated from the exterior. I checked it casually while pretending to admire the view, a clear security measure. I was a prisoner, but I was a prisoner with a secret. The undercover investigation began that night. While they watched a loud reality show in the living room, I unpacked my recorder and hid it behind a dusty artificial plant on the hallway credenza, a spot I confirmed picked up sound from the kitchen and the office door. I started a routine. I woke early, shuffled around in a robe, cooked breakfast for them while humming tunelessly, playing the part of a harmless and slightly dowdy aunt. I made sure to seem forgetful, misplacing my glasses, asking the same question twice. I accidentally used salt instead of sugar in their coffee one morning, and they exchanged a glance that said, "She is losing it." They ate it up, whispering about me when they thought I could not hear. "She is declining faster than I thought," Marcus said to Vanessa one evening in the kitchen, his voice picked up perfectly by my little recorder. "A few more weeks, and she will sign anything we put in front of her. Then we can sell the building and clear that mess with Vinny." Vinny, I knew that name from a fragment of conversation I had once heard at the laundromat, a name that tasted like trouble. I began to build a mental dossier of every red flag. I noticed the overdue bills piled in the kitchen wastebasket under coffee grounds, second notices in red ink, a letter from a collection agency addressed to Marcus Vance. The Lexus in the driveway was new, its paper plates still fresh, and Vanessa came home with shopping bags from high-end stores 3 times a week, the crinkle of tissue paper a constant soundtrack. Yet Marcus spent long hours on the phone, pacing the backyard, his voice rising and cracking. One afternoon I stood quietly by the window, pretending to water a plant, and heard him say, "I already mortgaged the equipment, you know that. The only collateral left is the building itself, and I cannot sell it until the old lady's name is off the deed. Just give me till the end of the month, I swear. Vinny, I'm good for it." The line went dead and he kicked a patio chair so hard it flipped over. I watched his face contort and I thought, he is a man drowning and he wants to drag me down with him. I needed evidence, not just whispers. The key lay in Marcus's home office, a room at the end of the hall that he always kept locked. But I had 30 years of bank security training. As a senior teller, I had been responsible for opening the night depository safes when the branch manager was absent, and part of that job involved knowing how to bypass simple mechanical locks on file cabinets and cash boxes if keys were lost. I had attended a 3-day physical security seminar back in 2002, held in a conference room at the downtown Hilton, and I remembered the instructor, a retired locksmith named Gus, a man with thick glasses and a nicotine stain on his fingers. He taught us how to pick a basic pin tumbler lock with nothing but a bobby pin and a paper clip. He said, "A lock is just a puzzle. The pins want to line up along the shear line. You just have to convince them." He made us practice on a clear plastic practice lock, and I had been one of the fastest in the class, my fingers steady from years of counting currency. The lock on Marcus's office door was a cheap quickset knob, the kind you can open with a credit card if the deadlatch is not aligned, but his filing cabinet would be harder. My first attempt to access the office nearly ended in disaster. I waited for a Thursday afternoon when Marcus was out meeting a distributor, and Vanessa had gone to a nail appointment. I had a butter knife from the kitchen and a wire hanger I had untwisted. I knelt by the door, heart racing, and began working the latch with the knife. I had just gotten the blade wedged when I heard the garage door rumble. Vanessa had forgotten her phone. I barely had time to scramble away, sliding the knife under the hallway rug, before she walked in. She gave me a strange look, but I babbled about looking for a lost earring. She bought it. I knew I needed a more reliable method and a safer window of time. 3 days later, on a Saturday, they both left to attend what they called a business seminar in a neighboring city. A trip I now suspect was really a meeting with a loan shark. They left at 9 in the morning and said they would not return until evening. I poured a cup of cold coffee and deliberately spilled it on the carpet right outside his office door, giving me a reason to be there with cleaning supplies. I knelt down, pulled a bobby pin from my hair, and unbent it into a straight tension wrench. The metal was springy but firm. From my pocket I took a small paper clip and straightened it, bending the tip into a tiny hook using a pair of needle-nose pliers I had found in the garage. The lock on the filing cabinet was a 4-pin wafer lock, common in office furniture, a model I recognized from the bank's own supply cabinets. I inserted the tension wrench into the bottom of the keyway and applied light pressure, rotating the plug slightly clockwise. I felt the first wafer bind. I slid the pick inside, my fingers remembering the feel of Gus's practice lock, and gently lifted the first wafer. It clicked up and set. The second wafer was stickier, resisting, so I increased the tension a hair and felt it slide into place. The third needed a little more torque, and my hand cramped slightly, but I breathed through it. The fourth wafer was the trickiest, almost overset, but I eased back and heard the final click. The plug turned smoothly, a soft metallic rotation, and the drawer slid open. The scent of stale air and desperation rushed out. Inside, I found a hanging folder labeled laundry, a joke so on the nose I almost laughed. It contained the forged bill of sale with my clumsy false signature, a phony notary certificate bearing the name Cynthia Belrose, and a stack of loan documents. I spread them on the floor and began photographing every page with my phone, ensuring the lighting from the window was clear. The loan documents revealed that Marcus had taken out a $200,000 commercial mortgage against the Laundromat building, using my name and social security number as a co-signer without my knowledge. The mortgage terms were predatory, an adjustable rate with a balloon payment due in 18 months, the kind of loan that strangles small businesses. The signature on that document matched the forgery on the bill of sale, a shaky imitation of my cursive, but the notary stamp was different, this time from a legitimate notary whose seal must have been stolen or misused. The name was Linda Hartwell, a notary I vaguely recalled from the local shipping store. Behind the loan papers I found a handwritten ledger, a grid of numbers in Vanessa's looping script, tracking monthly payments to a person called V. Marlowe. A gambling habit or a dangerous debt I could not yet tell. But the sum was spiraling, $3,000 a month, then 5, then 8. The latest entry, scrawled in red ink, read 10K due Act 15 or Vinny takes the cars. They were bleeding money and I was their planned tourniquet. I photographed everything, my phone clicking softly. Then I carefully closed the drawer, relocked it with the same pick, feeling the wafers drop back into place with a series of tiny thuds, and went back to scrubbing the coffee stain with a rag and some carpet cleaner. That night after they returned, I retrieved my hidden recorder and listened to a conversation they had while I pretended to sleep. Marcus said, "We need to get her to the bank this week. I've got the power of attorney forms ready. She just has to sign, play up the caring niece act, Vanessa." Vanessa replied, "I'm tired of playing nurse to a baddie old woman. Just get the money, Marcus, or Vinny is going to break your legs." The coldness in her voice was chilling. I had what I needed, but I needed to turn this into a legal trap. I made contact with my ally the next day. I called a number I had memorized from my bank days, Gina Marchetti, a former colleague who had left First Federal to become a fraud investigator for the State Attorney General's office. She had started as a teller like me, but she had gone back to school for forensic accounting, and I knew she handled elder abuse cases. I called her from my burner phone while walking to the corner store, pretending to be on a leisurely stroll. When she answered, I said, "Gina, it's Clara Vance, I need your help. My brother has forged my name on a mortgage and I think I'm being set up as a financial scapegoat. I have photos." There was a pause and then she said, "Clara, tell me everything. But not over the phone. Can you meet me at the coffee shop on Pine and 22nd, the one with the blue awning, tomorrow at 10? I said I would be there. The next morning I told Vanessa I was going to the library for a seniors reading club. She barely looked up from her phone. I wore a large sun hat and took a circuitous route, checking for anyone following. Gina was already at a corner table, a wiry woman in her 40s with sharp brown eyes and a no-nonsense manner. She wore a simple blazer and had a file folder in front of her. I slid my phone across the table and showed her the photos. She scrolled for 10 minutes, zooming in on the forged signatures, the notary stamps, the loan documents. Her mouth tightened. Clara, this is textbook elder financial abuse, forgery, identity theft, and loan fraud. The fake notary alone is a felony. Cynthia Belrose, I've seen that name cross my desk before. She runs a side business selling fake notary stamps out of a trailer in Indiana. Linda Hartwell's name is also known to us. She's under investigation for sloppy notarizations. If we can get the physical originals and a digital trail, I can take this to a grand jury. But I need you to do one more thing for me. She pulled a small USB device from her bag, a rubber ducky-style keystroke injection tool, smaller than a thumb. It had a black casing and a standard USB connector. This is a hardware keylogger emulator. You plug it into his laptop for 10 to 15 seconds, and it will extract his browser history, saved passwords, and any financial software he uses. It will copy everything to its internal memory, and then you unplug it and bring it back to me. It will give us the digital trail that ties all his transactions together, the emails with the fake notary, the loan applications, the communications with Vinny. Can you get 30 seconds alone in his office? I nodded. I was already invisible in that house, a piece of furniture with a heartbeat. The maximum cruelty beat arrived before I could finish the digital extraction. A few days later, I decided to test the final boundary of my brother's conscience. I staged a medical emergency. I had rehearsed it in my mind a dozen times while lying in bed at night, staring at the ceiling, the locked window a constant reminder. I knew the layout of the living room perfectly, the coffee table with its sharp corners, the Persian rug that would cushion some of the impact, the position of the office door relative to where I would fall. I waited for an evening when both Marcus and Vanessa were home, eating takeout Chinese from white cartons while I pretended to doze in a chair. I had already positioned my recorder on the bookshelf, its red light hidden by a framed photo. I stood up, took 2 shaky steps toward the kitchen, and then collapsed, letting my body go limp. I hit the floor hard, the thud shaking the pictures on the wall, and I made sure to wheeze loudly, clutching my chest, my eyes fluttering closed. The pain was real. I had intentionally not broken my fall with my hands, and my hip would bruise purple for a week. Vanessa screamed in genuine shock, a high-pitched yelp that cut through the room. But Marcus, my own flesh and blood, did something that froze the very breath I was faking. He stepped over my body. Not around me, not checking my pulse, but directly over my torso, his shoe brushing my arm, and he strode straight to his office door. I heard the drawer of the filing cabinet slide open, the familiar metallic rasp. Then his voice, low and panicked, muttering, "I need those papers before the paramedics come and start poking around. If they find the loan docs, I am done." He was not calling 911, he was securing evidence of his crime over what he believed was my dying body. I lay there for 30 seconds, listening to the shuffle of papers, then let out a theatrical cough and opened my eyes. Vanessa was standing frozen, her chopstick still in her hand. Marcus walked back, flustered, and said, "Oh, Clara, you just fainted. I was grabbing your medication list from my office. Let us get you to bed." There was no medication list. He never asked if I was okay. From that moment, any lingering family loyalty I felt was extinguished like a candle in a hurricane. I had a brother in name only. I had a target instead. That night I retrieved my recorder and listened to the audio. It captured every second, the thud, Vanessa's scream, the footsteps, his muttered words. I had a recording of him stepping over my body. I felt a cold satisfaction. The next afternoon I plugged Gina's USB into his laptop while he took a shower. I timed it carefully. I heard the water start, waited 2 minutes for him to be fully in, then slipped into the office. The laptop was on the desk, a sleek silver machine, and the USB port was on the side. I inserted the device and a tiny blue light began flashing. I counted the seconds, my heart pounding so loudly I was sure the whole house could hear it. 10 seconds. The light turned solid. I pulled it out, my hand shaking, and slipped out of the room just as the shower water stopped. I had the digital dirt. I met Gina at the same coffee shop the next morning, my sun hat once again my disguise. I handed her the device. She plugged it into her own laptop, a ruggedized model, and scanned the data. Her screen filled with file names, emails to Cynthia, Belrose at fakemail.com, a document titled Clara Exit Plan, browser history showing how to forge a signature, how to impersonate a notary, and power of attorney without consent. She nodded slowly, her expression grim. We have enough for warrants, Clara. The digital trail is a goldmine. The emails alone show conspiracy. But I want to catch him in the act of trying to force you to sign, so we can add coercion and attempted fraud to the charges. Can you set up a meeting where he believes you are finally capitulating? I devised a script. I called Marcus from my burner phone that evening, speaking in a warbly tone. Marcus, I have been thinking, you are right. I am too old to fight and I just want peace. I am ready to sign whatever you need. Let us meet at the bank and get this over with. His voice brightened like a man who had just won the lottery. Oh, Clara, that's wonderful. I knew you'd see reason. Let's do it Monday morning at the First Federal Branch on Oak Street, the one near the mall. It's quiet there. Vanessa and I will pick you up. I agreed. I then called Gina and gave her the location and time. She said she would coordinate with federal agents from the Elder Fraud Task Force and have them in an adjacent office with a wireless receiver. Monday came. I dressed in the same dowdy cardigan and orthopedic shoes I had worn for weeks, maintaining the image of a broken old woman. I made sure to shuffle and seem hesitant. Vanessa drove, chirping about a new vacation they were planning, something about a cruise. Marcus sat in the back seat with a briefcase full of papers, the forged bill of sale, a new durable power of attorney document that would give him control over all my finances, and a quitclaim deed for the laundromat. I could see the eagerness in his jaw, the way his knee bounced. We entered the bank, a familiar environment that smelled of paper and carpet cleaner, and a customer service representative led us to a private conference room with a long wooden table. Marcus spread the documents out like a salesman closing a deal. Just sign here, Clara, and here, and everything will be taken care of. You can finally rest. I sat down, looked at the papers, and then I looked up at him. I let the fog lift from my eyes. I let my posture straighten, my shoulders squaring, the way I used to sit when I balanced the vault. I pulled the original partnership agreement from my purse, unfolded it flat, and placed it on the table next to his forgeries. Before I sign, Marcus, I need to ask you one thing, I said, my voice calm and low, the voice I used when I caught a teller with a cash drawer discrepancy. Did you really think I was that stupid? His face went grey, the colour draining out of it like dirty water from a rinse cycle. Vanessa's mouth opened into a perfect circle of horror and her handbag slipped off her shoulder. Marcus stuttered, Where did you get that? That is not. You are confused, Clara. That is an old draft, a mistake you're misremembering. I slid the envelope with Daniel's letter across the table. Do you know what my husband wrote to me before he died? He saw you for what you are from the very first dinner we had with you after our wedding. He knew you would try to take everything. And do you know what else I have? I pulled out my phone and played the recording I had made during my fake collapse, his voice saying, I need those papers before the paramedics come. The sound filled the small room like a verdict, his own words damning him. Then I said louder, You stepped over my dying body to grab a piece of paper. You are not just a thief, you are a monster. At that moment the door opened and Gina Marchetti walked in with 2 federal agents in plainclothes, their badges visible on their belts. They had been listening from the adjacent office through a wireless transmitter I had tucked into the lining of my cardigan, a small lapel mic that Gina had given me. One agent, a tall man with a grim expression, read Marcus's rights. The other took custody of the forged documents, slipping them into an evidence bag with practiced precision. Vanessa started shrieking. This is entrapment, she tricked us, you can't do this, we were just trying to help her, but Gina cut her off with a sentence that was sweeter than any dessert. Ma'am, presenting forged documents and coercing a vulnerable adult into signing them makes you an accomplice. You might want to call a lawyer. Marcus looked at me, his face a mixture of fury and disbelief, and I said the line I had rehearsed 100 times in the quiet of my guest room prison. Trust washes out, Marcus. But fraud leaves a stain. The agents handcuffed him while the bank manager, a man I recognized from my old branch network, looked on in shock. I walked out of that conference room on my own 2 feet, past the queue of customers who had no idea what had just transpired, and I never set foot in his house again. The aftermath was a slow and methodical legal grind, but I had the best engine behind me, the truth. I moved back into my own home that afternoon, and Mrs. Hernandez brought over a casserole that was actually welcome. The trial was brisk because Marcus took a plea deal. He pleaded guilty to felony forgery, identity theft, and elder abuse. The court sentenced him to 3 years of probation, 100 hours of community service, and mandatory restitution of the $200,000 he had embezzled through the fraudulent mortgage. The judge, a sharp woman named Judge Evelyn Haskins, was particularly moved by the recording of him stepping over my body. At the sentencing, she said, "Mr. Vance, your conduct is among the most callous this court has seen. You will repay your sister every cent, and you will do so while serving your community in a manner she deems appropriate." His assets, including the Lexus and a collection of Vanessa's handbags, were seized and liquidated. The fake notary Cynthia Belrose was tracked down in a small town in Indiana, where she had been running a sideline in fraudulent stamps out of a P.O. box, and she was charged separately with 30 counts of notary fraud. Linda Hartwell lost her notary commission and faced fines. Vanessa divorced Marcus 3 months later, taking what little was left of his reputation and moving to Arizona with a man who owned a used car dealership. I received a certified check for the full restitution amount, which I put into a high-yield savings account. But the best part, the part that made every sleepless night worth it, was the community service order. I petitioned the court, and Judge Haskins allowed me to define the terms. I told her about the laundromat, about the late nights I had spent folding towels while dreaming of a quiet retirement, about the betrayal. She looked at me over her glasses and said, "Mrs. Vance, what do you propose?" I told her and she nodded. Today, Sudsy Bubble's laundromat is gone. In its place stands Sudsy Justice, a clean, bright establishment with new machines, a fresh coat of pale yellow paint, and a neon sign in the window that pulses pink and blue, visible from 3 blocks away. I own it fully, the court having awarded me sole proprietorship and clear title. The mortgage was satisfied, the fraudulent loans expunged from my credit. The business now turns a steady profit, and I've hired 2 part-time employees to work the day shifts. But I did not stop there. As part of his court-mandated community service, Marcus reports to the laundromat every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday night from 9 p.m. to 6 a.m. He wears a uniform I designed myself, navy blue polyester with a white name patch that reads Marcus, and right below it a chest logo that says Trust Wash Out in bold serif letters. He is my janitor. He scrubs the toilets, polishes the dryers, mops the floors, and cleans the lint traps with a long wire brush until they gleam. I installed a camera system, and sometimes I sit in the back office, a cup of herbal tea warming my hands, watching him on the monitor as he pushes that mop across the same floor he once tried to steal from me. He never sees me, but he knows I am there. Every swipe of his mop is a stroke of my quiet vengeance. He clocks in and out using a biometric scanner, and each time he has to see the neon sign flashing Sudsy Justice like a heartbeat of retribution. The moral of my story is simple but enduring: hold on to your originals. Paper is armor, just as Daniel said. The truth does not shout, it waits in a safety deposit box. Revenge does not need to be loud or violent. Sometimes it is a 3-night-a-week reminder that the rinse cycle catches everything. Some people build monuments. I built a laundromat with a neon sign and a uniformed janitor who calls me ma'am every time he clocks in, his eyes never meeting mine. Have you ever discovered a dark secret about someone you trusted completely? How did you handle it? Let me know in the comments. If you believe that planning ahead can protect you from even the deepest betrayals, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more stories of quiet vengeance. I am Clara Vance and this is Sudsy Justice. Thank you for listening, and remember, always keep the original.